Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of Pit Pass Network interviews. Today, we are joined by Dawson Cram, the newest driver of the number four Chevrolet Camaro for JD Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, as he was just signed on this past few days. So, thanks so much for joining us, Dawson.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about my new deal.
Yeah, for sure, exciting news. So yeah, how excited are you to land a full-time ride with JD Motorsports next season?
Yeah, so there's a lot of emotion, a lot of things that went into this to, sit back and reflect on. I actually used to be an employee here at JD Motorsports, and I really got to know the entire family down here, and I got to know Johnny really well, and a lot of the team members. So getting able to join up with them just feels right, and being able to say that I'm for the first time in my professional career going to have a full-time seat and be able to sit back and really plan out my season and prepare for races weeks in advance is going to be, a large blessing.
Yeah, that's very awesome. It comes in full circle now with you being a like you mentioned, you're working with JD Motorsports in the past. I saw on your Wikipedia you worked as a mechanic for them in 2020. So so yeah, that's very special for you. But and then this upcoming season then in 2024, because you'll be full time for the first time, you'll have a lot of opportunity uh to race on new tracks that you haven't raced on yet. I did some research um and out of the Xfinity trucks and ARCA races you've done, there's 10 new tracks that you get to race on next season, including Daytona, Atlanta. You technically did Atlanta, but the new configuration of Atlanta. Um,
Yep.
Coda, Portland, Sonoma, Iowa, Pocono, Indianapolis, they're going back to the oval, Watkins Glen, and Charlotte Roval. So I guess out of all those tracks, which one are you most looking forward to attacking next season?
Man, I'm looking forward to all of them and being in the seat every weekend. But Charlotte Roval, I've actually been to every single race that has been held on the Charlotte Roval, and I have yet to be able to race it. So I'm extremely excited to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then you get to race on two historic tracks, Daytona and Indianapolis. You've done the Daytona road course before in the trucks, I believe. Um,
Yeah.
but but you get to do the Daytona, the actual like super speedway for the first time in Indianapolis. So how excited are you for that as well?
Those are both historic tracks, and anytime you get to run at either of them, it's a big moment. Just going to the racetrack there and taking it all in is almost surreal. I've been fortunate enough to be able to attend races at both of them several times, and it's going to be pretty cool to be able to hop in the car and go out there and race.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And then also, half of those tracks I mentioned are road course tracks. So you're gonna experience a lot of road course tracks for the first time. And I mentioned earlier that Daytona Road Course is actually your only start in a road course race in 2021 where you finished 17th that day. Uh, so are there any like fellow drivers you're gonna lean on this upcoming season to help guide you in the learning curve of attacking road courses because they're fairly new in them?
Yeah, there's always drivers that I go to about weekly and ask them questions, but there will be a few ringers that I'll, try to reach out and ask questions to, like a Alex Labay or a Preston Pardis or Brad Perez, someone like that that, could probably give me some insight.
For sure. And I remember you raced for Emily and Gase Motorsports before, so I guess there's a lot of correlation with that. A lot of those drivers raced for that team, like Brad Perez and Alex Labay and those people.
Yep. Yep.
But also, I guess recapping your season then, you had a pretty eventful season, like going to from team to team. You actually raced for three different teams in the Xfinity Series: Mike Harmon Racing, Team Alpha Prime, and SS Greenlight Racing. So what was it like going from one race shop to the other throughout the season, like juggling through that?
Well, it's hard, but you're almost like a family in the community because we all see each other every weekend. And funny enough, there was people at every team that I'd worked with at other places. So it was always a nice warm welcome, especially having teams that believed in me to go there and do my job. So it was fun, and I learned a lot and got to work with some new people and see some friends at other places.
It's very cool. And then I guess like recapping the season, how would you assess how you did in the 2023 season?
I think there's a lot of growth, and I feel like it was a very productive year and I learned a lot, and I got to show some of these teams that I was capable of, pulling some stuff off, and that ultimately landed me right here at JD. And I'm excited to continue to keep growing on all the momentum that we had from last year.
For sure. And then I guess the last race of the season actually was your highest high note of your season. You qualify your best career 17th and finish a career best 19th. So I guess what was it about Phoenix that day that gave you success that day?
Well, we just really worked hard at, the car all day long. We actually unloaded the slowest car in Phoenix, and we stayed late as long as they'd let us stay and worked on the car, and we showed up in the morning and we qualified 17th, and we celebrated for a little bit, but then we said, there's still work to do. We got to make good adjustments as the track changes and the sun goes down. So we worked together as a team greatly, and they trusted my feedback, and I trusted that they were going to make the correct adjustments, and we just didn't give up, and it played out well.
And then jump starting to next season, like you since you were in so many teams, you got to work with a lot of different drivers too. Which driver like stood out this season that like really was a big influence for you and guidance that you can bring on to next season?
So funny enough, Brennan Poole, who I'm actually taking his crew chief and car chief from last year, and funny enough, I he was at my Carmen Racing the year before, and then I went to that team, and then now I'm going to JD. So I've kind of been following in his footsteps. Did some races at G2G with him as a teammate, but he's been a tremendous help. In fact, before we put this deal together, I was leaning on him, asking him questions, and he's been very open with me in a kind of a big brother role almost, and very helpful and insightful and lots of wisdom.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then I guess one race you experienced this year at Texas, it was extremely hot that day. So how did you handle the heat that day? And was the cool suit underneath your fire suit like effective at all that day, or was it still like really toasty and such?
So funny enough, I was just talking about this with someone asking me questions about how they should, go about their fitness for this upcoming season. So that race, I actually had the flu going into it. And I drove with the team to that race. It was like 16, 17 hours there, went through tech with them the day before, and then raced. And it was extremely hot, but I did wear my Rini suit, which is a cool suit that helps tremendously, but you still got to be, physically adapt. I work out with a trainer, Hunter Smith at Fitstop Performance, and like I was there this morning for 2 hours. We condition for and prepare for those worst case scenarios like that. There's going to be some really hot races this year. I was looking at the schedule. Iowa's going to be really hot. Texas is always hot. Indy's always hot, and you just got to be prepared and treat yourself like an athlete. So I think I'm prepared for this year. I'm gonna keep working at it every day, and hopefully we can keep my head on straight and not fall out of the seat at all this year. I didn't last year, so let's keep on that.
For sure. And then sometimes you have to expect the unexpected. Like, have you ever had like an air conditioner like break during a race?
Yep. Actually, my cool box and Rini suit failed at Kansas, so I made it through that one. That was a warm one too.
That must have felt like the longest race ever, that Kansas race, probably with losing all that access to cooling systems and such.
Yep. Actually, when I ran in the truck series, I didn't run any of this stuff. They're a little bit cooler than the Xfinity cars, but I tried to stay on that path. And the Xfinity cars are so much hotter that I went out and invested in a Remy suit, which helps tremendously.
Oh, yeah, that's a interesting fact I never knew. Like the truck series, I guess the trucks, I guess, are cooler than the Xfinity. So that's a cool fact there. But then and then at the Darlington Fall race, you got to honor Kyle Petty's paint scheme. They drove in the early 2000s. So I didn't mean to honor like a legend like that. And did you talk with him at all that day?
I unfortunately did not get to see him, but he sent me a really nice text. My grandparents actually used to partake in the Kyle Petty charity ride every year. They did it for about 10, 15 years. Um, and they also still sponsor it to this day. But to get to honor a family like that, because our entire team got to honor the family, was pretty special because that family has done so much for this sport, and Kyle gives back so much to the community of, not just racing, but everybody that he can with his foundation. So it was really cool to, run that historic paint scheme.
That's very awesome. And then the other Darlington race, you got to honor the late Bob Keselowski, Brad Keselowski's father, who drove in the Truck Series. So what did it mean to honor Bob that day? And then did you talk with Brad at all that day as well?
Not that day, but the week leading up to it, I talked to Brian Keselowski and Brad Keselowski, and just thank them because I talked to them before we did it to get their permission to be able to use the paint scheme. But Bob was a tremendous role in my career from 2020 to 2022. Before his passing, he was working on my truck when Brian Keselowski was the crew chief, and he meant a lot to me. I learned a ton from him. I saw him every day in the shop. He was in the shop, almost all the way up until his passing. He was they don't make him like Bob was. He's a hard worker. He was a true racer. He was very intelligent. So it was a tremendous honor to run that paint scheme, and it meant a lot to me. I have pictures saved on my phone of it, and it was almost emotional to get to drive that car. It meant a lot to me and my dad, and that's probably the most special one I've ever run. We are actually going to run it in 2021 to honor Bob, and we were going to surprise it with him on one of our trucks, but it just didn't come together. And I actually worked my tail off to get it done this time and it was a little bit more accurate this time too. So I was happy.
Yeah, it's a very awesome story there. And then speaking of just like past drivers, like growing up as a kid, who was your favorite driver growing up?
There's a few of them, but Brad Keselowski was up there for sure.
Yeah, that's very cool. And then in 2018, you made your Craftsman Truck Series debut at Martinsville with Beaver Motorsports. So I guess explain to me the emotions of that day of just making your first start in a NASCAR National Series event. Like not everyone gets to do that.
Yeah, it was funny. So it actually snowed that day. So we ran like 20 laps of the truck race the first day, and I actually fell out of the seat because I was so nervous. I was death gripping the wheel and wore myself out. And we got to go home for like 3 days while it snowed in Martinsville, and we came back and ran the rest of the race, and I was fine. But that was a big deal. Is I was 16, I think, when I ran my first truck race. So I was a kid. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, it's really cool, like starting that young. It's just really, really cool accomplishment there. Um, and then your NASCAR Xfinity Series debut took place at New Hampshire in 2021 with Mike Harmon Racing. So I guess how did that opportunity come about with Mike?
Yeah, so funny enough, me and Mike had always talked because I was working at the track with JD Motorsports, and I tried to introduce myself to all the owners that were present at the track weekly. And I had talked to Mike before about doing it, and I had a sponsor to go run Watkins Glen in the truck. And I was talking to BJ McLeod, who had driven the 6 car that I worked on the year before. That year I was on Landon Castle's 4 car. And I was like, hey, what do you think would be more beneficial? Should I run an Xfinity race or should I run Watkins Glen? And he said, you should for sure go run the Xfinity race. And funny enough, I feel like I learned the most that day because I got to run around, Jeffrey Earnhardt, Landon Castle, Jesse Little that entire day.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess like with we talked about a lot about like our past races now. But is there like one that stands out you've done so far that's like really memorable to you?
Man, they all stand out, but this past Phoenix was, pretty monumental to me because it felt like I saw all the progress that I've put forth.
For sure. And then what was the emotions like your first race at Charlotte because you're from North Carolina?
So that was, it was cool, but there was half capacity fans. I couldn't have my family on pit road. My dad was there, but he comes to all my races. So it was definitely really cool because I think it was 15 of my friends in the stands, and I got to go hang out with them after the race. So that was really cool. But running Charlotte this year was even cooler because I got to have my family there.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then speaking of family, I guess Now, I guess walk me through your background in racing because I know you have a rich family history in racing.
Yep. So my dad's dad, my grandpa, my papa Al, he raced in New England, and so did two of his brothers. They ran modifieds and late models, and that got my dad and his brothers into racing. They did enduro races, they did late models, modifieds, some dirt racing on with modifieds, and drag racing. And they ended up. My dad moved down here first to go work for Jeff Bodine's truck team, and then ended up at DEI, where that's where my mom starts to come in because my mom during this time span was on the West Coast in California, LA County, and my grandpa was racing late models at man, I can't think of the name, Mesa Marin Speedway. It's where Kevin Harvick's from. Uh and Ron Hornaday drove my grandpa's late model sometimes and his Southwest Tour car as well. And Ron Hornaday was actually still is my mom's godfather, and that's how my dad and my mom got to meet is through the truck series. And then they migrated over here and they had a few kids. We moved out to San Diego in 2005 for my dad to take a K&N West, which is our ARCA West Series job, to better balance family and racing because he was in the NASCAR Cup Series at that point with Chip Ganassi and felt like it was too much time away from family. That's where I started racing was in San Diego.
It's very cool. And then I saw on your website all the racing series you've done. You recap like all the racing series.
Yeah, so started out in mini doors on dirt. They're kind of like they look like a legend car, but they're smaller, like a go-kart, same horsepower, same speed. After that, I moved up to a Bandolero on asphalt. They ran, low quarter mile asphalt tracks and road courses. From there, I moved to a dirt winged kart while I was running Bandoleros. And from there, I progressed to legend cars, which I ran on dirt, asphalt, and road courses. From there, I progressed into super trucks, limited late models, super late models, and then the truck series.
Yeah, it's crazy how many series you have to build up to get to the trucks and Xfinity, like how many series you experience. But is throughout that time period of the all those series you've done in your childhood, like is there any drivers you raced against that you race against now in the trucks and Xfinity?
Oh, there's a ton of them. Chandler Smith, Chase Purdy, Christian Eckes, Noah Gragson, Zane Smith. Hmm, man, I'm gonna miss some. Kyle Weatherman, Bailey Curry. Um, Not sure who else. There's a lot of them. There's about a race. I've raced almost all of them up until that point. Funny enough, though, Josh Berry, me and him didn't race against each other until we got into the Xfinity series.
Oh wow, that's because he's a short track guy, so
Yep,
that's actually surprising. And the Snowball Derby just happened last weekend. Have you ever raced in that?
I have not. No,
Is that like a bucket list you want to do one day?
I've thought about it when the only crown jewel super late model race I ran was the Easter Bunny 150, which is a kind of a more special race for me because it's a home track at Hickory Motor Speedway. But I'd definitely like to make a snowball derby campaign one time.
For sure. And then we talked about family just a little bit ago. Actually, like the majority of your truck starts in 2020, 2021 was for your family-owned Cram Racing Enterprises. So how special was it to work with your family to help your truck career and NASCAR where you are now in Xfinity?
Yeah, it's definitely special for my family to own a team, and not everybody gets to experience something like that. And the community of your family believing in you and giving you the opportunity to trust you with their race cars, which are pretty expensive. But it is really cool. Everybody on my family had a job to do. We actually owned a team most of my life where we would develop younger drivers, and that was, it just felt like an extension of that.
And then you experienced Talladega for the first time in the Truck Series in 2020. And what was the adjustment like going to a track like that? Because you haven't experienced Daytona yet, you're gonna experience that next year, but to go to a track like that with high speed, like 3 or 4 wide racing, like Talladega.
So I actually had done a few tests at Daytona and ARCA car, so I was kind of used to the drafting. And I had been to Michigan where we actually almost ran in a pack in the truck series. But it was definitely really cool to get to experience some plate racing, and I'm extremely excited to go to Daytona and run a few of those this year.
What do you think you learned the most in plate racing, like so far? Like, because there's a lot involved with it.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to run many laps that day because we wrecked on lap 11 when they wrecked like 30 of us. So, just gauging runs was the biggest thing. And I worked with Nemechek those 11 laps, and we just kind of, played around with learning the draft.
For sure. And then I guess I guess now uh I guess like adjusting now to a different topic. I guess walk me through like your faith journey. Because I know and how it's led you to where you are now and how much of a role it has in your racing journey. As I know in your announcement with JD Motorsports, you quoted First Corinthians 10:31, which says, "Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God."
Yeah, so it's been, I feel like for everyone, it falls along with everything you have going on in your day-to-day life. And for me, that's just been, staying after my goals and trusting that I can trust the process and knowing that things will work out if I just trust and believe it will. And that's really been the biggest journey. I want to be able to, give glory to God in all things. That's why I quoted that, is because I'll have 33 opportunities to be able to give glory to God and bring his name out to, my audience.
For sure. And like everything God gives is a gift, and just that all those races you're going to race next year is definitely a gift from him. So that's awesome.
Definitely.
And then and then I saw on your Instagram story that you're actually really close to winning in the Moon Car series, an online racing platform where you were leading in the final laps, but ultimately didn't get it. But walk me through the events of that final lap.
Yeah, so there was a restart with it was a green white checkered, and I had been working with Garrett Smithley the entire race, and I was streaming on Twitch as well, and I was actually talking back and forth with the viewers saying, "Man, I actually think I might be able to win this one." And I was hoping to work with Garrett on that final restart, and he chose the top lane, and I chose the bottom lane, and I shoved the car in front of me, which was Michael P. Frisch, out to the lead as we crossed the white flag, moved up to the top because the top had a run coming, and third place gave second place too big of a push as we were going down to the white line or the yellow line, and he kind of got loose and hit me in the right rear, and I spun. And I feel like I could have saved it, but then the pack swallowed me up. So we'll get one of these times. I've run a lot of moon car races and haven't been able to do it yet, but like we ran the 24 hours of moon car and ran in the top 10 the entire time. I was 60 cars for 24 hours, so it's getting closer.
That 24-hour race you did you race the whole 24 hours, or is it similar to the Rux 24 where you switch with drivers?
We switched. Connor Daly, Garrett Smithley, and Colin Fern were all on my team, and Brandon Hastings.
Oh, cool. And then that race you did just the other day in the Moon Car series, who else were in that race?
There's a lot of people that run it. I know that Dale Jr. runs it a few times. I know he ran the 24 hours with us. Landon Huffman runs it a lot. Uh, Ryan Vargas runs it a lot. I'm not sure which NASCAR drivers were in it. Garrett Smithley was in it for sure because we drafted together, but I need to do a better job at looking at who's running them.
And then the timing you did races, I know the past couple of years been limited schedule with Dale Jr. Did you race against Dale Jr. In any of
Yep.
his one-off races?
Yep. I got to run against him at Homestead this year.
That's really cool. Did you have a conversation with him pre or post race?
Unfortunately, I did not, but we talked at Kansas about how he was coming to run some few races.
Yeah, that's very cool. And then I guess now I guess what is your like heading into the race day? What is like your routine?
So usually it's depending on who I'm driving for, but I like to get to the track with the entire team and then go over SMT data with my crew chief and review any footage or notes that I have because I write some pre-race notes and then just kind of get in focus to do my job.
And then how do you kind of like control your nerves then before like or when do you get most nervous? Like when right when you get to the racetrack or like the second before you get in the race car or like when you get in the race car like when you most nervous during race day?
So fortunately, I've been doing this my entire life, so now I'm kind of at the point where I really don't get nervous that much, except for some big races. Like I feel like at Daytona, I'll probably be a little bit nervous before the race, but fortunately, I haven't been as nervous as of recent years.
And then I forgot to ask when I mentioned your JD Motorsports announcement, but have you're gonna drive the number 4 car. Have you driven the 4 number before in any other racing series or is this the first time?
So funny enough, I ran one four-car number ever in my life. It was a late model and it was a red number four car like I'll run this year. And we sat on pole and made it about 10 feet out of the restart box before I got wrecked. So hopefully we can build a better momentum from that.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're going from a red 4 car to another red 4 car in the Xfinity series. So full circle a moment again with that.
Yep.
Then and then I guess also preparing for a race. We mentioned like online racing. Do you do a lot of that the week prior to a race?
I try to do a little bit. You can learn some bad habits, but you can also learn a lot if you use it correctly. So I try to relate it to any in-car or onboard footage that I review before and try to, pick out what is correct on the sim. But iRacing is a great platform for that.
For sure. It's crazy how realistic it is. But and then do you prefer like if your car can't be the absolute best handling like neutral, like do you prefer a looser tight car?
Uh, Typically a loose car.
And then I guess the next question, I guess over the years you've gone to race on a good amount of tracks, but what's been your favorite racetrack you've raced on?
Martinsville,
Martinsville. I guess that's a short track. What's been your favorite intermediate track?
Texas,
Texas.
which, yep, which I know a lot of people aren't fans of Texas, but I enjoy Texas.
And then I guess are there any other drivers you raced against that like throughout the years like in trucks or Xfinity or that you hang out a lot outside the racetrack?
There's lots of drivers that I hang out with. I actually live with Dean Thompson, and he races in the truck series. We've only raced against each other once, though, in one truck race. But Colby Howard, Wallace Allen, Brad Perez, I hang out with a lot of them. Myatt Snyder, Ryan Vargas, Garrett Smithley.
That's very cool. And then are you more of a like going into the corner, do you tend to be more hard on entry or slower on entry type of racer in the turns?
I guess I guess it would depend on my mood. People joke about the fundamentals of racing. When you start getting behind, you start overdriving the entry. So I can do that sometimes.
And then I guess which track or the Homestead track, I guess you experienced that before. Like I know a lot of people ride the Highline like the whole turn. Have you tried that in that track?
Yeah, so I run a few tracks where we're able to do that, and I kind of pride myself in my ability to do it as of, coming from dirt. A lot of the dirt guys are able to do it well, and I have sort of a dirt background, but I run the fence at Charlotte, Vegas, Homestead, pretty much Kansas, all the ones that you can. I had been there in the truck and had done it. I feel it's a little bit more forgiving in the Xfinity car to run up there than the truck is, but I feel like it's something that I do have as a skill.
And then you mentioned you have a dirt background, like during like some of those races, have you tried like what Larson would do, like a slide job in the turns?
Yes, there's a few tracks where you're able to pull those off, like a Michigan.
And then over the years, I guess going back to your dirt background, what's been like your favorite dirt rate or dirt track you've raced on?
Millbridge. Millbridge
Millbridge?
is yep, super versatile racetrack for a little racetrack that it is.
It's really cool. And then I guess what's like one characteristic you would want people to know about you that they may not know about you?
Ah, man, I'm not sure what people would know or don't know, but I for sure don't give up and always am resilient.
And then speaking of like not giving up, I guess what's been like the biggest hurdle you would say you had to get over to get where you are now?
Well, as a lot of people bring to the public eye, racing is a lot about funding, so finding sponsorship has been a strong hurdle, but I found ways to, make that happen.
For sure. And then I guess growing up, um, have you ever like tried any other sports than racing, like for your school or something?
I did some running cross country. I didn't enjoy it much. It was mainly just for my fitness for the racing, but that was really it. My sisters are avid in horseback riding, so I tried that a few times, and then really anything with motors, I gave a try once or twice.
It's very cool. Uh, and then did you watch like any other sports, or do you enjoy watching any other sports on TV than racing?
I'll watch them. I don't understand what's happening though.
And then I guess you mentioned siblings. How many siblings do you have?
I have two sisters. They're both older than me.
And then do you have any pets in the household with Dean?
He just got a cat. It's his cat though, but his name's Theo, and he's still a kid. And I think he's 3 months old.
That's very cool. And then outside of racing, what do you most enjoy to do your free time? I guess you have a lot of free time now with the off season.
Yeah, so really hanging out in the shop with the guys is one of the big things. Mountain biking and training are another two things, and fishing and hunting.
It's really cool. And I guess now we end with some fun questions here now, to wrap up this interview. So I guess the first one, have you ever been overseas before?
I have not no. My sister did live in Spain though.
Oh, wow, that's a really cool fact there. What was she doing there? Like a internship or something, or
So both my sisters work in the horse industry doing hunter jumper horses, equestrian, and she was over there working with the team.
that's really cool. And then you mentioned that you've never been overseas, but if you were forced out of the country and you had to relocate, what country would you choose?
Ah man, I'm really not sure. Probably the UK because they have some really cool racing over there. Or maybe Australia. They have some really cool racing there too.
And then the next one, what is on your bucket list?
I'm not sure. One of the things I was thinking about the other day was try to go to some of the major what are those called? State parks, like Yosemite and all those.
And then who's your all-time favorite Disney character?
Oh, favorite Disney character. I guess the Mickey Mouse.
It's a classic there. And then I guess
Well, is Star Wars now Disney characters too?
yeah,
Technically,
I think
I'd say Grogu then.
okay. It's a good one as well. And then do you prefer bone-in or boneless wings, and what's your favorite flavor?
Well, boneless wings are just chicken nuggets, but I just get to stay classic at Buffalo.
Yeah, it's a classic there. And then what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate. I'm boring.
It's a classic though.
Yep.
And then and then do you know how to play any instruments?
I do not know. I could play the recorder at one point.
Yeah, I remember playing that as well. And like I think everyone did in elementary school.
Yeah.
And then what's your favorite music genre and your favorite artist and song of that genre?
Man, this one's gonna come as a shock to a lot of people, but reggae and stick figure and probably Hawaii song.
Oh, cool. What music genre is that?
Reggae.
Oh, reggae, sorry.
Yep.
Thought that was the artist at first.
Yep.
But but yeah, I guess wrapping up the interview now, I guess Pit Pass Network enjoys to donate to a charity after each interview. So is there a charity you'd like to highlight for us?
Yeah, the Dale Jr. Foundation.
Oh, cool. Well, wrapping up this interview, thanks so much, Dawson, for joining us. It's been a great honor getting to know you more, and congrats again on your announcement to JD Motorsports full time. That's exciting news, and wish you the best of luck the next season coming up. And yeah, thanks so much, Dawson.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Looking forward to talking to you soon, and thanks for having me on.